Welcome everybody. This is the Elementary General Education Breakout Room. I use the term breakout room loosely because we are close to 300 people in this room of itself. So as I was, please make sure that you stay on mute during this time together. The goal is to provide you a bit more information. You feel free to use the chat if you would like to offer questions or input. Please know that it is unlikely that there will be a response to that chat verbally or live in this session, but we will save it. I would also invite, again, everyone, and we'll put the link up as we get closer to our end time, to complete that exit ticket. That is the common data point across all breakout rooms, so will be critically important for us to understand the needs and questions that are coming up for staff across the district. So what I was saying when I was on mute is I hope I'm the only one that continues to hear the doorbell. I apologize if that's distracting for anyone else, but we are going to go ahead and get going. All right, so during our brief time together, we've got about 20 minutes. Our focus will really be the instructional model. That there was a lot of information in that whole group, and that will be the primary focus for our time today. Together, specifically, we'll be talking about kind of what does the day look like for both adults and students. We'll talk a little bit more about synchronous and asynchronous instruction. We'll look a little bit about what we know about Wednesdays and how we're planning for that. A lot of interest and need for prepping for this transition, and we recognize that. So I'll share what we know and what we're working on. And then again, like I said, we'll make sure we save time for that exit ticket where you can provide input and make sure your lingering questions are known. So just to overview again, this was shared in the large group. Just for clarity, we are thinking on a half-day model. So this is different from, for those of you who participated in webinars maybe in July and August when we were thinking about hybrid instruction and thinking about 2 full days a week. Based on our experience with ILC, based on the interest in having a consistent presence for students, we are moving to a half-day model. So this slide illustrates that, where a student A in the AM cohort would be at school in the morning, for instance, 4 days a week, Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday. Their classmate may be in the PM cohort, so would be at school in the afternoon those 4 days. And then at Wednesday, everyone will be at home, similar to now. This is a slide that just tries to illustrate the kind of the day in the life of the student. So if I'm a student in an AM cohort, I would be working with my family certainly to complete that attestation. I'd travel to school, I'd be at school, and I would be in my classroom engaging in learning, going home at the end of that morning, and then engaging in asynchronous learning in the afternoon from my home. The opposite would then be true for students in the PM cohort. So they would spend their morning at home engaging in the learning asynchronously. A student would then travel to school and be with their in-person peers and teacher for the afternoon, and then head home. This slide does give some information, very high level, around the safety plans as well, but again is designed to paint a picture around what that looks like for any given student. This one is the same information, a little bit more deeper with a little bit more detail, and is looking at the teacher. What does this look like for teachers? So again, teachers going to be at school, have that dedicated time before students arrive, after they complete the attestation. They would have their morning group of students for 2 hours and 15 minutes, so 9 o'clock to 11:15.
Recommended to try and push as much.
If everyone could make sure you're on mute, that would be great. Let's see if I can help with that. Perfect. So group A would be in the morning from 9 o'clock till 11:15 in this scenario. There would be then space for planning time and lunch, some connection with families, additional dedicated time prior to the PM group arriving. Afternoon group would then be in person for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and then the day would end. So again, just trying to describe what that kind of day in the life looks like. So what we know, and this will be a pattern, we'll talk about what we know at this point and then what we are still working on. So what we know is that we're moving forward with the AM/PM model. We know that that in-person learning will look like 2 hours and 15 minutes, 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And we know that there will be asynchronous learning and likely specialist instruction remotely from home on any given day, with supplemental small group support for some students. So again, thinking about that asynchronous time, we'll go into that a little bit more deeply here in just a second. Thinking about the types of supports that would happen throughout a typical school day and that are happening now. It might be specialist instruction, PE music, it might be small group support through LRC, or through an intervention or student-specific, student-focused group using staff across the school. So that is the overall design. We are working on developing a instructional recommendations for use of time during both the synchronous and asynchronous. So more detail on that will be coming. So with synchronous and asynchronous, again, we know that we have learned so much as a system. Teachers have learned so much about what works and what doesn't for their students. We are accustomed with these models. Transitioning to hybrid is just packaging them a little bit different. So this is a different scenario than transitioning like in March to full distance. That was unknown. We had no idea what that looked and felt like. This gives us a little bit more context, and we certainly want to capitalize on all of the learning that's happened. So we want to trust teachers and teams to know and to continue what's working for their students. We do have instructional frameworks that are increasingly specific, and hopefully you're finding them increasingly helpful to provide guidance on learning activities and tasks and those types of activities that lend themselves to asynchronous learning and those that really need to be prioritized when you're synchronously working with students. We know that math will continue to be a priority. That is something that we know that distance learning or any interruption to learning can have the most impact in regards to creating learning gaps. So we want to continue to prioritize math, but there have been questions around, is math going to be the only content taught in person? We don't anticipate that. So it won't be that one content area is taught in in-person learning and another is taught remotely or asynchronously. Rather, that we will have instruction that happens in person and then extended through asynchronous learning. What we're working on here is looking at those existing frameworks, recognizing that some tweaks and improvements are likely going to be needed, and that is in process within our teaching and learning team and based on input that we continue to receive from teachers. Wednesdays. So we know that there's no on-site instruction on Wednesdays, so kids will not be at school physically in school buildings on Wednesdays. We anticipate that Wednesdays will be a fair share of asynchronous time. So students, again, extending learning that they've had in class the last 2 days, might have some individual assignments that they're working on. That could look like through Seesaw, as is happening currently. Remember, you're going to be with kids, so it could be that we have more flexibility in providing, paper resources for students who have had some challenges with our current distance learning model. So there will be opportunities to support learners in the ways that they need. Aren't necessarily afforded to us very easily right now. So there will be asynchronous time on Wednesdays, and as I mentioned earlier, there will likely be some synchronous instruction. That could look like specialists, if that's part of their current schedule, for instance. It could look like small group instruction. It could look like a class meeting with their whole class. So that is we're currently planning for Wednesdays to look pretty similar to what they do right now. And we also know, just as there is now prioritizing teacher and team planning, it will continue to be a priority. And again, what we're working on is we develop the specific kind of hour by hour, if you will, schedules for the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and recommendations there. We will be doing the same for Wednesday schedules, very similar to what we did for distance learning. Recognizing that this is a transition, we know that there's going to be need for time and planning. So what we know right now is that there will be time provided. We recognize that it's a need. We know that in addition to kind of wrapping our head around and planning instructionally, there is classroom arrangement. We recognize that some of our new teachers haven't been in their classroom yet, and that's going to take time. So we're planning with that in mind. In order for to support teachers and teams to make the most of that time, our commitment is that we have all of the guidance, all of the materials, all of the resources developed and available at least by this time period that you would have for planning. We're working to, you heard today that the earliest that we'll bring students back is March 1st. We are still working to be ready as a system by February 1st. And so know that that is what we're working on, so that teachers have what they need as a commitment that we have. We also know that this isn't just up to classroom teachers. So our teaching and learning staff is ready and available to assist in this transition in the ways that schools and teams and individual classroom teachers require. What we're working on in terms of details around this is the specific guidance. This is a conversation and continued collaboration with HEA. So it is in process. And again, the specific guidance on what that time will consist of will be communicated as soon as it is known. Okay, so in terms of events that are coming up, we do have family webinar scheduled for Thursday of this week. We have a morning session and an afternoon session. I believe that has all gone in district email. If you have questions, reach out to a colleague or your supervisor, and they'll be able to provide you those details. But again, that is really intended to provide families with opportunities to learn more about our current planning. And then over the next 2 weeks, we will be again reaching out to families to get their input. You likely heard that we did do a staff survey. Thank you for many of you that helped with that, and heard back from about a third, 29%, I want to say, of our families, which we know we want to hear back from more. So this is another attempt, and we will be working to make sure that we understand where our families our thinking is, and that will allow us to plan for all of the important details around staffing and student assignment and any changes or adjustments that need to be made there. I will also say that staff input and sharing your thinking and your plan is equally as important. So thank you for everyone who participated in the staff survey. And if you have questions, please do reach out to your immediate supervisor to share your questions and concerns and interests. Okay, I am going to try to put this link, one second here, in the chat, and then I see there's a lot in the chat, so I'm going to get the link in there so that you have that and can copy and access the input form. So just one second. Thanks for bearing with me here as I figure out all my screens that are open. There we go. All right, so there is a bit.ly link. So if you want to capture that right now, especially if we get any more in the chat before it goes away, please do take a few minutes to fill that out. And I'm just going to scroll. I think it's going to be very unlikely that I'm able to answer many of these questions just because of volume. I'm scanning and I'm seeing information about PPE, questions about PPE or personal protective equipment. I will name that when we brought our students served an ILC back, it gave us an opportunity to learn a lot about PPE as it relates to various roles across the system. So there is knowledge and there are plans in place there. Individual school safety plans, as they're developed, will be one place where that information is shared. And there will also be staff training around the use of PPE specific to each individual role. So that is a part of our transition process before anyone is back with students in person. Scanning again, let's see. So questions around asynchronous learning and Wednesdays in particular. So what I would offer here is, again, thinking about that learning as an extension. We are working on a visual to kind of help communicate this, so bear with me for the time being. But if you think about having half of a class Monday morning, they're going to go home and continue to work on the things that you instructed on, that you provided initial instruction on Monday afternoon. When you have the students then Monday afternoon, they're going to do the same thing that the first group of students were. They're going to do that work Tuesday morning. So if we can think about it in whole day chunks, and I recognize it is different, especially for our younger learners, we would never in a typical situation do direct instruction for 2 hours and then say work independently for 2 hours. I recognize that, so it's absolutely a change, but think about it as an extension, and we will do all that we can as we are continuing to do and build up in the frameworks, the tools and resources to help support that. So we'll continue to create ways and tools to help teachers and teams think about that. And again, I want to say what I said at the beginning. I recognize how much we have all learned and how much expertise is in this space. So we want to capitalize on that. Let's see. There are pieces in here that, again, they will be copied. I'm not going to answer questions around buses and transportation. It's outside of my wheelhouse. Para-educators, again, will continue to be critical members of our instructional team. So many of the pieces that I named will be are similar for para-educators. We'll be working on guidance for scheduling, knowing that there is some variance across schools around utilizing our critical classified staff. Let's see, surveys and family communication being provided in multiple languages. Absolutely. Our communications team, as well as our family engagement team, are working to create a number of ways to reach out to families. So please know that we are working as many ways as we can. And if there are ideas that you wonder if we've considered, please share. That would be a great thing to provide in your input form. Day in the life of schedule for specialists. I think specialists in this regard might mean music and PE and library instructors, and that will happen. Yes, again, the schedule, as you all well know, is very distinct amongst schools, but we will be providing more guidance for that particular group as well. Let's see, I think I already talked. Thank you for providing what WAC is. Yes, Washington Administrative Code. Thanks for helping each other out with that. Let's see. Questions around safety. Again, if there are specific questions that you have now, please put those in the input form. And also know that safety planning, because there are so many pieces that are unique to each school context, things like traffic flow, things like attestation process, things like monitoring anyone who may be experiencing symptoms and the response plan there. Absolutely, there is district level guidance informed by guidance from the Department of Health. each school will be working to develop and communicate school and site-specific plans. So if you're not hearing those details here, it's because we recognize that every physical building has its own context. What I can say is that, again, all staff will be trained not only on those specific plans, but on elements around use of personal protective equipment, again, what to do if there's any a suspicion of symptoms, if you're experiencing them yourself or hear any reports of symptoms. So there is a plan for that. Our health services team has been developing those that professional learning, that training, and that will be distributed and shared at the school site prior to anyone being in person. Okay. Let's see. Yes, changing students from one teacher to another. Absolutely not anything any of us would set out to do mid-year. On the list of things that are not good for kids. And we also know that we're living in an imperfect system right now and an imperfect context. So we'll absolutely be working to minimize that and are hopeful that teams will be working together to make sure that we really continue to know our learners and that we are able to continue to support them in this new environment. So once again, I'm putting the input form in the chat. So if you didn't get that earlier, please do copy that and take a few minutes to fill it out. It is 5 o'clock, and so we are going to end. Again, next steps are family webinar coming up this week, and then the family commitment window, and there will be more communication certainly as we move forward. So thank you all for your hard work, and I wish you a good evening.